Okay, we're going to get into XCode for the first time. We're going to create a project in XCode. And when you do that, you'll notice on the left side here, you have either iOS or Mac OS X. We're obviously not going to be concerned with Mac applications. We're looking at iPhone, iPad applications. So iOS is what we are concerned with. There are various different types of templates to start from. Navigation based will basically you have a navigational, or you have items that can navigate you from different parts of the app, bringing up different screens each time. The tab bar is an opposite of that, sort of, where you don't have the navigational controller on top. You have the tab bar on the bottom, and you can then use the tab buttons to move from screen to screen. Utility application is generally for creating settings, and it has sort of an arrangement of you choose options for settings. It's basically what it really is. And a view-based has an app delegate and a view, and we'll talk about that later. I don't want to get into too much jargon right now. The window-based is the general form of the application. I want to start with that one. We're going to type it as my app. Okay. Prometheus, where is whatever your company is here. This bundle identifier comes from the company name. So if you type something differently, it would change the bundle identifier. You have iPhone, iPad, or Universal. We're going to leave it as iPhone, of course. Don't worry about using the core data or including unit tests. Don't worry about that yet. We're going to create next, and we're going to set it on our desktop. That's where we want to create the folder for it. When we do that, you will notice on the left-hand side you have 2 files here, and a third here as well. And then you have, if you open up the supporting folder, you have another file here. Objective-C uses 2 different types of files that are the core programming files. The .h file is where we declare all of our information, and the .m is where we implement that information as declared. Let's take a look at that for a moment. It's very, this file, for example, is very, very brief. Interface is called myAppDelegate. That's the name of the interface, or the name of base on the file. It's an object. The NSO object is the highest root object in Objective-C coding. Everything originates from an NSO object. It's an application delegate instance, and there's a property that they created here. It's called an outlet. An outlet is anything that will interact or have interaction with the user, or at least the user interaction will at some point be connected to that. There's 2 words here, non-atomic and retain. Retain means retain it in memory. Right then and there it tells us we're going to have what we call a +1 rating on this property, which means we'll have to release that window, for example. We'll have to release it from memory. We have to be good memory citizens here. And non-atomic means that we're going to let the computer or the software, XCode, create the setters and the getters, and we'll get into setters and getters shortly when we talk about these methods. What's here in this code is it says, okay, declare a property, make it non-atomic and retain, make it an outlet, make it of the type of UI window, and call it window. This asterisk here is always in front of things like strings or windows, not integers, but yeah, they call it window. So that's what that line of code means. And anytime we end our code in XCode, there's always a semicolon, which is similar to C+. At the top here it says create an interface called myAppDelegate, as we said before. make it an NSO object type, being specifically a UI application delegate type. And we're only importing the main UI kit, universal interface kit. So we declared all of this. Then we have to implement. When we implement here, you'll notice the one item we declared, we have to synthesize it. We declared it, we created it, said what its properties would be, and then we have to now synthesize that. The second thing you'll see above that, it says implementation, exactly what this file is. We implement here, we declare here. So we're going to implement this newly created instance of app delegate, right, which is the interface here. And we're going to import the file we declared initially, the myappdelegate.h file, which means get all the information that's in here and use it, and use it for our implementation. So we synthesize the window. In this case, they could have just said synthesize window, but they said, okay, synthesize window and set it equal to _window. This coding may be a little bit confusing for you, but it's really simple when you get the gist of it. And you notice down at the bottom here, as we said, in our declaration file, because we retain it, we have a +1 rating on it, which means we have to release it. In the deallocate method here, and we'll get into these methods, we release it from memory as a good memory citizen. So we create it, we use it, we release it. These methods, by the way, you'll notice these methods have a hyphen, minus sign, whatever you want to call it, in front of it. These are known as instance methods. What does that mean? Every time an instance of the app delegate is created, and we'll get more into that in a moment, these methods can be utilized from them. You have two types of methods that you can create. Either an instance, which is usually minus, right? We're going to put this void here. Or, it's going to give me an error, but I'm just going to, you can have a plus, right? The difference in these methods are as follows. This is an instance method. This is a class method. Okay? The instance method, I'm going to get rid of these for the time being. The instance method runs whenever an instance of the app delegate or whatever the class is created, and you can then interact with it. So when I create an instance of the app delegate, I can, did finish launching with options, I can resign active, I can, do all of these things, become active, there's a will appear, sometimes there's a will appear, there's a will terminate. These are based on the instance, but if I have a class or a plus in front of it, I don't need to have an instance created. I can simply run the method from the class. And we'll see that later down the road. Now, we look over here, we have only one other implementation type file, .m. You never touch this file. There's nothing to touch here, but this runs, it actually runs your application. It's your application file. The other file is the XIB, which is called the nib. The nib file is actually where you're going to find the user interface. And in this case, we're going to click on the file owner, and if you click on it and then double click on it or right and left click, you're going to see, in this case on my MacBook, you're going to see the outlets here. Files owner is here, and the app delegate. Now, because they're an outlet created here, right? I should see an outlet over here, right? And you notice I do, right? The delegate. On the Windows side, there's a window outlet, and it's linked to the app delegate, where it is in fact declared here, right? So that, in a sense, will tell you what you need to know. And again, we create the outlet. The outlet is part of this window, and it's referenced to the app delegate where it is in fact created, so that we can utilize it through our nib, and we'll get into nib files later on. Other things I want to talk to you about right now is just the interface here, the editor. Right now we have the classes opened here. If we close that, whoops, on the view, not on the editor, I'm sorry, on the view, the classes go away. If we open up this output, this is any output from when we build. We'll get into building sometime later. That output is below, and on the right side we have what's known as the inspector. To show you, I'm going to click on my app delegate here. In the inspector, its class that it runs is in fact the class of my app delegate right here. Okay. All the information that it's utilizing is from these two files. So everything has its purpose. These two files here, one declares, one implements, and the nib then uses that information, and it must be specified here. If you don't specify the class that you're going to you need to use, you will not have those outlets available. If I were to take this away, those outlets would go away. We're going to see that later on. Okay. Files owner has a general application class associated with it. The other one here is a first responder. We don't need to be concerned with that right now. It's nothing that's important to us at this moment. The organizer opens up this documentation organizer, which you have repositories and information that can help you. The editor allows you to see the editor in various different configurations. I can have information here. This is an XML type format on the left, but I like keeping it here. I can utilize everything that I need. Menu bars at the top here. Some other things here. You'll notice this little bar here. A call out. There's no log here. This keeps logs. Here's some breakpoints here. There's no debug session that has been created. Warnings will be here if there's any issue found. Here's a search page. Here is a structured tree of what you have in your code in a hierarchy. You have a class called myAppDelegate. You have methods within that. Remember the methods we saw? Let's go back for a second, if we will. These methods here, these instance methods, they're all as these blue M. Right? An object here, this is our object. It'll highlight it if we click on it. And this is what we synthesized from the window. It is not. It is the object being created here, and then of course the actual object after it's synthesized as a V. You can double click and see some things there as well. Navigator, help, and browsing the hierarchy. The M's again are methods, and they're color coded as methods. Okay, everything is color coded. C is the class. Alright, and this is the class here. Tells you exactly. If you can go right to them, jump right to them if you want to find them, without having to just scroll through code. Makes life easy. So that's really it at this point in time. And by the way, this little bar up here, we're in iPhone's 3 simulator. Don't put it into any other simulator, because when you go to test this, you will have to keep it in the simulator for the simulator to appear. If we do a test on it now, it's going to build it. Just to show you, we're not going to really have anything visible other than a blank screen, if I'm correct. And we are. I'm just going to come out of it for a second. There's my app right here. And we haven't built anything, but the simulator, if you don't have this selected, you can't use that simulator. And it tells you some information here about finished running that. And of course, after you do a build, you notice in the bottom here, this is our output. Okay, and it says we terminated the actual app at this point. I'm going to close that. So That is navigating Xcode. What we're going to do in our next session is look at modal view controller, the interactions between those three items and how they play into an iPhone app, because we're not going to be able to program without understanding that. And when we do that, you'll get a better idea of how this code links together. And even in today's session, from the nib, you understand why these two are needed. So the .m folder needs the .h folder, and then both of these folders are utilized, or at least for the nib. Here in the app delegate, here. So all the information you see here is then utilized from the app delegate. But I want to discuss the mode view controller in more detail in the second session. And then in the third session, what we'll begin to do at that point is get into building the code and understanding these items. The code, again, is simple if you understand it. It's a language like anything else. You need to understand that, for example, here, if I didn't import this, this is what would happen. Since I didn't import this file here, I can't synthesize this. I have no way of seeing it. And similarly, I can't make the window visible, and I have an incomplete implementation. And by the way, when you have an error, you will see these items pop up. And if you want to know what they are, just single click on them. You cannot find interface. And same thing here. This is not created. So that's the thing with Xcode. If you don't reference items or don't import them or put them in correct files, you won't see them. And now that we see it, the errors go. To save a file in process, you'll know it grays out when you make a change. Command S on your MacBook. So those are the things for today. The takeaways of today: creating a project, what the .h or declare file is, the .m or the implementation file, the nib, which is a .xib file. And in the next session, we'll actually put these files in this information rather in a diagram to show you how it flows, how things interact. And then in the third session, we'll get back to coding. So take care. Hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll